Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills today as they take on Stefon Diggs and the Houston Texans. Injury updates, key matchups, and our pregame superlatives are all coming up. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour pregame show presented by the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And Charles G comes in and says, "Morning, fellas. Judge, you're a maniac." Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm coming live from the Cover One West Coast studio. So these 8 a.m. Pregame shows are 5 a.m. pregame shows for me. And as I was just telling Dave off air, my 18-month-old is currently going through a sleep regression. So I was up at 4:15, 4:30 to get ready and get set up for the show. And my baby was up until 2:30 last night. So that was a lot of fun. Rolling on about 2.5 hours of sleep here. Plus I went to the ASU Kansas game last night. So I'm really in a good place right now. That's why I'm wearing a hat, because the hair is not something anybody wants to see right now. But speaking of not in the mood, which was what I should be right now, but I am, and I'm here. I'm not in the mood today, Dave, for what is going to be the in-your-face way Stefon Diggs versus the Buffalo Bills is going to be presented.
I will say this about sort of my feelings on the whole situation, going back to when he was still here and all this. Like, it never really struck a nerve with me. Like, I just kind of brushed everything off. I never really cared too much about like what was going on with the whole situation. Like, when he got traded, I was like, yep. I mean, like, it stung to like lose a player like that, but it just didn't really bother me too much. I will say that the in your face sort of like somehow how the Bills did him wrong or something like that is kind of annoying to me. And that's like probably the first thing that's really kind of like, I wouldn't say bother me, but it's kind of been like, really, like one of those, like, really, like, we're making this out to be some kind of like situation where the Bills did him wrong. And I just can't wrap my head around that. I still love Stefon Diggs as the player. He did so many great things for this organization. And I wonder how much of this is really just media driven kind of storyline for this game, because at the end of the day, this is in the 1:00 window. This game probably should have been a primetime game when all was said and done. But I'm going to try to avoid caring too much about it if I can.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Nico Collins came out this week and was like, "We got to win this one for Stefon Diggs. It's a big game for Stefon Diggs." Like, the next level arrogance of finger quotes win this one for Stefon Diggs and that type of rhetoric is just absolutely insane. I mean, this is a Buffalo Bills team that paid Stefon Diggs. This is a Buffalo Bills team that set up Stefon Diggs to have the 4 best years of his career. So not only did we essentially give him a quarterback to put him over the top, we paid him pretty handsomely here. And then he walked away with most of our money and left us in a pretty big cap hole, a situation that he completely 100% manifested and constructed on his own to get out of here. So the next level arrogance for that kind of rhetoric, the Bills will never say this because they've been nothing but sort of courteous about the way Stefon Diggs has exited. I hope they take it personal. Like, I really do hope the Buffalo Bills have a chip on their shoulder today. I hope once this game starts, you see a couple Buffalo Bills players take some runs at, take some shots at, get lippy with Stefon Diggs. Like, I hope that there is some underlying animosity there, and I hope that we see it on the field.
Well, this team needs to show a little bit of a grit after what happened to them last week against the Ravens. And at the end of the day, this game, early season game, the Texans are 3-1, the Bills are 3-1. what really matters the most is this could be a really important game in the AFC seeding race come playoff time, right? The Texans look like a team that are probably going to win the AFC South. The Bills have a really good chance to win the AFC East. Both teams 3-1. So this tiebreaker for this game, a conference game, a head-to-head, when it comes down to playoff seeding later in the year for hopefully 2 division winners could mean a lot. So from that angle, the Bills really do need to have a chip on their shoulder and try to win this one because from a tie-breaking standpoint, this could become a really important game at the end of the season.
Yeah, dropping 2 AFC games in a row too after Baltimore last week would be rough. Roy Collins comes in and says more media driven than anything. Got to get those views. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but take this link, hit the share button, and send it to your friends and family if they're looking for a pregame conversation. Because I will not be watching any of the CBS, Fox, or ESPN or NFL Network countdown shows this morning because the storylines and all of those various different things regarding Stefon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills will be pretty intolerable. And I'm also not going to be in the mood for the discourse if Stefon Diggs has a pretty big game. So I hope the Buffalo Bills can find a way to shut him down. Looking at the weather for today's game, record highs in Houston today, 90s and sunny. None of that should matter because if the weather is that hot, my guess is, and my assumption is that roof is going to remain closed there in Houston. Injuries are big. Like this is going to be the injury bowl. The Houston Texans will be without Joe Mixon, Jerry Hughes, and Derek Barnett for sure. Questionable Dameon Pierce, not expected to play. Questionable Titus Howard, expected to play. Robert Woods is questionable. Dylan Horton is questionable. Kurt Heinisch is questionable. Jake Hansen is questionable. And a late addition, which is never good. Starting linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair is questionable with an illness. My guess is leaning towards out if Jamal Hill, one of their rookies, is going to make their first career, it could be one of their first career, get his first career active in this game. A lot of injuries on the Texans side, but hey, no sympathy from the Buffalo Bills. Out, Von Miller suspended, Khalil Shakir with his ankle at Oliver, hamstring injury in practice, Taylor Rapp, concussion, Austin Johnson injured against the Ravens, questionable, Terrell Bernard expected to play, and Teron Johnson unlikely to play. Saw 2 practice squad elevations from the Buffalo Bills this week, Tyrell Shavers and Branson Dean. Shavers, he can gun on special teams, which is going to allow Mac Hollins, one of your typical gunners, to focus solely on offense. That does leave the Buffalo Bills without a gadget-style backup to Curtis Samuel with Khalil Shakir out. And then Branson Dean is getting the elevation over Eli Anku. This means Zion Logue, who was signed this week from the Atlanta Falcons practice squad, the big defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia, the rookie, he's probably going to get plenty of snaps today. And Dwayne Smoot, who I thought might kick inside to play a little 3-tech, he's probably more likely going to stay along the edge. So many injuries in this game. I figured we would just weave those into the offensive and defensive previews since there are so many to talk about. A lot of them affect the matchups. But one notable storyline, I want to get your sort of opinion, your take on this. The Bills' first 3 picks this year: wide receiver, Keon Coleman; strong safety, Cole Bishop; 3-technique defensive tackle, Dwayne Carter. 3 major injuries this week: wide receiver, Khalil Shakir; starting strong safety, Taylor Rapp; starting 3-tech defensive tackle at Oliver. So between these 3 rookies, Coleman, Bishop, Carter, plus Ray Davis, plus Javon Solomon with Von Miller suspended, it's going to be a big day for the 2024 Buffalo Bills draft class.
Big day for the draft class. And I mean, look, you're going to kind of take some positives away from this. Is it's not like Keon Coleman has been lacking on the snap count, right? He's been pretty much the highest snap percentage wide receiver that the Bills have been using this year. We know he missed the first quarter 2 games ago because of the time thing, but otherwise, like, he's been playing a lot now. Still third on the team in targets, right? Which we kind of maybe forecasted going into the season. It would be Kincaid, Shakir, and maybe Keon Coleman third on the team in targets. And it doesn't feel that way because the Bills really haven't thrown the ball a ton overall, right? Probably less than that we have expected over the course of 4 games. But it is time for Coleman to step up. Probably going to get a lot of Derek Stingley on him playing on the outside. Dwayne Carter got some reps, as you mentioned at the end of that game last week. But again, he needs to step up. Those reps were valuable. He's probably had the least amount of playing time of any of these guys. And Cole Bishop getting some reps in, obviously, last week as well with Taylor Rapp going out. It's time for these guys to step up, and maybe it's earlier than the Bills had planned for, but this happens in the NFL with injuries. I think that from what I saw from Cole Bishop being a willing tackler, at least in that game last week, like it's a tough ask for him, but it's a good, you know, amount of opportunity here for him to learn. And in that regard, I will say, when still sticking kind of with the injuries front, Tank Dell, who we didn't mention, is playing, which I think is going to be a big add for the Texans back into their lineup. It's going to make that trio of Collins, Diggs, and Dell a handful, even without Joe Mixon. So that plays into kind of what role Cole Bishop might have in this game as well. Going to add a little bit of extra difficulty for the back end of that defense. So yeah, the injuries are big, but it's time for the rookies to step up, and it's a big spot on the road again in a big AFC matchup. So we'll see if they're up to the task.
All right, let's get into the matchups now. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Houston Texans defense. Dave, what does the DVOA tell us about this Houston Texans defense?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw AQ mention it in the comments about Kincaid getting in behind the linebackers and play action. But as far as the DVOA, and I'll get to that point in a second, DVOA, they're 6th overall, 11th against the pass, 4th against the rush. What is the DVOA telling us? Well, from a raw statistics standpoint, the Texans have the 5th best defense in terms of yards per game allowed. So the DVOA kind of aligns there with the raw numbers, as they're selling the DVOA 6th overall. What's interesting to me is that the DVOA really does like the Texans pass D being 11th overall versus 4th overall against the pass in raw statistics. So that tells you that 4th overall against the pass, 11th in DVOA. The DVOA is taking into account the fact that the Texans have faced a Jaguars team who's bottom 10 in the NFL passing, a Colts team who's bottom 10 in the NFL passing, a Bears team who has struggled to get the passing game going, and a Vikings team who kind of blew the doors off them, which was like the one solid opponent they had from a passing offense standpoint. But this Texans passing defense, although good raw statistically, the DVOA is telling you that they're still good, but they haven't really been tested yet from a passing game standpoint. So you can see that they're showing through in the advanced analytics. And then you see 13th against the run in raw statistics, but 4th in DVOA against the run. So the analytics favor the Texans run D more than the raw statistics are telling you. You see the Colts, Vikings, and Jags both in the top 4, all 3 of those teams in the top 14 rushing offenses so far this year. So the DVOA is telling you that this team is pretty good against the run. And although the Bills played a really good run D last week against the Ravens, they were fairly efficient when they were able to kind of stick to that game plan. So we'll see if they can continue that today. So I would say, in summation, maybe a little bit more crack in the armor against the pass D than the raw statistics would show you, maybe a little better in the run D than the raw statistics would show you. And then getting back to Aaron's point about Kincaid, they are number 1 DVOA against tight ends this year. And you're like, oh, well, like, does that mean that the Kincaid's going to struggle? But then you look at kind of the opponents again, the Colts, Mo Alley Cox, not exactly, and Granson, not exactly world beaters. The Bears, Cole Kmet's good, hasn't really come on until recently. And then you talk about the Vikings are without TJ Hawkinson, it's Munt and Oliver. And then the Jags were without Evan Ingram in that matchup, Brenton Strange filled in. So again, the Titans number 1 against the tight end in DVOA defense, but haven't really played anyone of the caliber of Dalton Kincaid yet. So let's see if maybe the Bills will take their chances in trying to get Kincaid involved, because they're really short on options right today. So there's your DVOA summary.
Yeah, looking at some of the SIS data, I mean, most use of 4-2-5 nickel defense in the NFL, 5th most in the usage of 4-1-6 dime defense. You have 5th most 7-man boxes of any team in the National Football League. They like sneaking Petrie up near the line of scrimmage. They rank 10th in the use of man coverage and they're the fourth most effective man coverage team in the National Football League per SIS. Guys like Daryl Stingley Jr. can get after it with the best of them. So it's a challenge for the Buffalo Bills this week on offense. And as Aaron pointed out, attacking these linebackers, I think, is going to be huge, because just looking at what the Ravens did to the Buffalo Bills last week, I think you're going to see the Houston Texans try to recreate that. Someone mentioned in the comment section, a moment ago, they don't blitz a lot, the Houston Texans, but when they do, it's effective. Well, the Baltimore Ravens last week, they didn't really blitz a lot, but what they did was they dialed up a lot of creeper pressures, and the Buffalo Bills never really could seem to figure out where the fourth guy was coming from, because they kept switching up who that fourth guy who was rushing the quarterback was coming from, and they dropped a bunch of guys into zone. So it's going to be really interesting to see how much of that the Houston Texans try to recreate, how much of their own style man-to-man they try to mix in. They do have some injuries to that front seven, though, right? Jerry Hughes and Derek Barnett are their two top rotational edges. So maybe they have to play their starters a little bit more in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, who are absolute dogs. And then, with the injury or the illness to Shair, maybe that throws some of their plans into a loop, right? Like Henry 202 is young guy. Christian Harris is a young guy. Aaron mentioned in the comment section, they like to fly around, maybe get a little too aggressive. So maybe the Buffalo Bills can take advantage of that aggressiveness, get some quick hitters going, get some misdirection going, get them in the run game, try to get the ball to Curtis Samuel in some creative ways, like try to dial up the yak extension of the run game type of things, attacking the middle of the field. There's a whole bunch of things I think the Buffalo Bills will probably try to incorporate today to attack this Houston Texans defense.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we talked about going into the Ravens game, how the Bills maybe would need to open up the playbook a bit, and they really didn't get a chance to, the way that things kind of snowballed on them early. So maybe it was like a little bit back to the drawing board, take advantage of that aggressive nature of that Texans D, a little bit kind of how the Ravens took advantage of the Bills D last week, getting the Bills defense flowing in one direction with the play and the ball going in another. Maybe a blessing in disguise. The Bills got to use some of what the Ravens did, and we'll use that a little bit against the Texans to their advantage, because it's going to have to be a little bit more creative today, I think, than what we saw a week ago.
Yeah, this seems like a game to me where, again, unless Houston gets rolling offensively, where Josh Allen could, throw the ball 25 times, like that's the kind of game that could be in store for the Buffalo Bills today, trying to maintain drives, keep the ball out of the hands of this Texans offense. And the Bills maybe will try to lean on the running game with Khalil Shakir out. I expect another big week from James Cook, and maybe even more of an emphasis on getting guys like Ty Johnson and Ray Davis involved.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Khalil Shakir out, a lot of chatter, and I would even say grumblings, right, on social media about the usage of Curtis Samuel and the fact that the Bills are paying him this 3-year, $24 million contract, and the integration and the usage into the offense we maybe haven't seen. Like, this is a chance for Curtis Samuel to maybe fill into that Khalil Shakir role. He has the skill set to do it. He has the physical sort of archetype to do it, what Khalil Shakir does. And maybe this is a chance for Curtis Samuel to break out a bit and be like, hey, look, like Stefon Diggs moved to Houston. Who did you replace Stefon Diggs with, Buffalo Bills? Well, your main big free agent signing was Curtis Samuel. And that's like what you did as like on day one, essentially, to replace Stefon Diggs. So maybe there's a little bit of like an underpinning story here, that there's a little bit of a Curtis Samuel narrative we can build up around, like him maybe showing like, hey, they brought me in for a reason. And it's a chance for him to kind of show up a bit this week. And with Khalil Shakir out, the opportunity is now, right, for Joe Brady and Curtis Samuel to kind of make some magic today. So let's see if that happens. And I agree with Charles. Maybe he's not fully healthy, but he hasn't been on the injury report. So you just kind of have to, I don't think he's 100%, but he's not injured enough to where the Bills are putting him on the injury report. So don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Bills today, Curtis Samuel is obviously the direct, backup to Khalil Shakir. So with Khalil Shakir out, anything that you were feeding Khalil Shakir, whether it's in the extension of the run game type of stuff, uh, giving those yards after catch opportunities, counting on him in the short to intermediate. That's really where Curtis Samuel should be getting involved today, and
Yep.
even getting more downfield, right, and pushing downfield. Matt Harmon, reception perception, when the Buffalo Bills signed Curtis Samuel, said, "Hey, this is one of the more underrated downfield separators in the National Football League. So maybe we can dial some things up to try to stretch the field a little bit today with Curtis Samuel." But if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm leaning on the 12 personnel and maybe even mixing in some 13 and getting the big jumbo package out there with Alex Anderson. Get that play action passing game rolling. Try to get guys like Curtis Samuel a runway when they catch the ball so they can get some yards after the catch. I would funnel this offense through Kincaid, Knox, and Cook. I think those should be the guys setting the tone for this offense. I really want to see Dawson Knox get reintegrated into this offense in a meaningful way. And then we just been talking about Curtis Samuel, but the wide receivers in general, funnel it through Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman. Like, I don't need to see the Buffalo Bills overusing Matt Collins today. I think that will be a mistake. And quite frankly, I don't need to see any more of Marquez Valdez-Scantling just because Khalil Shakir is out. I think that would be a mistake. It should be Coleman. It should be Samuel. Those should be the two guys that you lean on. Go 12 personnel so you don't have to bring those other receivers on the field except in extremely auxiliary roles.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of joking facetiously in the comment section. Like, MVS is like kind of due for like one of 3 big touchdown bombs he catches a year on his like 12 to 15 catches he has in the season. Today would be a nice day for that to happen, right? Because maybe you loosen up that defense a little bit to allow you to really work that play action in the intermediate. It would be nice for the Bills to have something to stretch and loosen up that defense a bit. But I do agree with you. Like, those are the guys that you have to funnel it through. I mean, Cook and Kincaid were the guys that without Shakir, we're going to say they were going to have to funnel it through anyway. So I think Curtis Samuel filling in that Shakir role becomes important. The Bills need to have a reliable option other than Cook and Kincaid, because it just definitely feels right now that there's a little bit of like searching for answers a bit. And maybe we'll see Keon Coleman too get a little bit more involved today as well. So let's see if that happens.
Hashtag free Keon. And I say that kind of facetiously because the Buffalo Bills have let him play a ton. He leads the Buffalo Bills wide receivers in snaps. But really, what I want to see with the Buffalo Bills to do today with Keon Coleman is get creative. Like, let's make him a chess piece. Attack downfield, right? More of that back shoulder stuff, more of getting him involved down the field stretching. But also, how about we move him into the slot, right? Now with Khalil Shakir vacating the slot, there are more slot snaps available. Get Keon Coleman some run as a big slot and get him some of those yak opportunities, the extension of the run game opportunities that were going to some of the other receivers. Get quick hitters into the hands of Keon Coleman, who was a rather good punt returner at Florida State University, even for a guy of his size. So get him some opportunities underneath and let him, try to make a play with the ball in his hands, from the underneath. So get Keon Coleman the ball. Like, if we funnel him 6 to 10 targets today, I won't be upset by that. Like, that's something I think the Buffalo Bills should maybe focus on is don't force it, but try and get the ball into his hands 6 to 10 times and make guys like Curtis Samuel the focal point of this passing game from the wide receiver position. All right. Now let's take our focus to the Buffalo Bills defense versus what's on paper looks like a very, very good Houston Texans offense, despite the fact that they are dealing with some injuries to their running back position. Dave, what does the DVOA tell us about the Houston Texans offense?
Yeah, the offense, surprisingly not as good of a story for the Texans as they have on defense for the DVOA. They're 20th overall, 16th in the pass, 21st in the rush. They were 26th overall a week ago, so they do move up to 20th after that game against the Jags. What does it tell us? Well, they came out of the gate strong on the ground in week 1 with Joe Mixon against the Colts, but without Mixon in the lineup, that rushing attack has been middling, right? You've got the fact that Mixon's not going to play today. That's huge for the Bills. They've had 213 rushing yards in week 1, but since 75, 38, and 101, the passing game's hitting its stride now, but Tank Dell has been hurt, and he's coming back today. You look at what they do in the passing game, 16th in the passing game DVOA, 4th overall in the raw statistics. It tells you that they are once again sort of taking a closer look at the opponents that the Texans have faced in these first couple games. Colts, Vikings, Jags all have been very bad against the pass this year. The Vikings and the Jaguars are the 2 worst passing defenses statistically based on raw stats per game this year. So the DVOA is saying, hey, we're going to kind of nerf your rating a little bit, even though you're 4th overall raw statistics. We're going to bring you down a bit. You're 16th overall based on our metric. And you kind of have to take a look at the fact that they have played some pretty bad passing defenses. Now, the Bills' passing defense has largely been good this year. So I think a big test for CJ Stroud in this game, but he does get Tank Dell back, like you said. What's interesting to me in this is you have Nico Collins with 30 receptions on the year, Stefon Diggs with 20. Their next closest is Dalton Schultz with 10, right? So what is Tank Dell back in the lineup going to mean for this Texans offense? The raw statistics definitely tell you that passing offense maybe isn't quite as good as it would seem based on the opponents they played. I do think that this Bills defense will represent the biggest test for the Texans passing offense to date. But again, we do have some of those injuries that you mentioned. So we will see. I still think that in my mind, even though the DVOA has them as a middling passing offense, the raw statistics do have them as a very good passing offense. I think the truth is that they're actually probably, as they hit their stride, closer to where they are raw statistically than what the DVOA says. I think they're a top 10, probably maybe even top 5 passing offense by the time this season's over. They're 4th overall, obviously, right now. And I think that DVOA will creep up. So they will hit their stride, I think, with Tank Dell back in the lineup. And that's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge for the Bills today.
Yeah, I mean, the big benefit for the Buffalo Bills today, and you sort of hit on this already, no Joe Mixon or Dameon Pierce. People forget, right, with all of these receiving weapons, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Stefon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, people forget this is a Kyle Shanahan offense under Bobby Slowick, right? So this is predicated on the run, setting up the pass. Last year, Devin Singletary was an absolute workhorse. It got him that contract that it got him in New York. Joe Mixon, as you mentioned earlier, was absolutely rolling in week 1. And quite frankly, so was their offense. Now, with your offense sort of and your rushing attack, I shouldn't say your offense, but your rushing attack being predicated around Cam Akers and Dare Ungabawale, there's only so much you can do. And I think that this offense is sort of out of a rhythm a little bit, and they can't get it going in the passing game like they want to because they're not getting it in the other half of their offense in the running game to set that kind of stuff up. So I think it's to the Bills' advantage, but also guys like Ed Oliver and Austin Johnson being out of this game is huge because who knows? Maybe Cam Akers or Ungabawale or JJ Taylor, like maybe they can get it going if guys like Branson Dean are in the Buffalo Bills defensive line rotation, or Zion Logue is in the Buffalo Bills defensive line rotation after only being here for like 4 or 5 days. So that's the big question for the Buffalo Bills up front is I think the Houston Texans offense will be out of sync if they cannot get a run game going. They should not be able to get a run game going, but could the Bills' tattered defense stop this Houston Texans rushing attack, even though the names on paper aren't the greatest?
Yeah, and I mean, the Texans, like we said, they really haven't hit their stride yet. They're 19.8 points per game, bottom half of the NFL in that, 40% third down conversion rate, middle of the pack there. 40 offensive penalties so far for this Texans team, which is the most in the NFL. So they haven't even been super disciplined on offense, and CJ Stroud's been sacked the 6th most times in the league through 4 games, 13 sacks. So without Oliver in the lineup, can the Bills and Von Miller, to be frank, can the Bills find a way to get home in this game? And even if it's not getting home to sack CJ Stroud, even though he's been sacked the 6th most times, those 40 penalties, those 40 offensive penalties for the Texans, you wonder if that's been a focus of D'Amico Ryans and this team this week, being a bit more disciplined. Can you force some holding penalties, right? Even without Von Miller, like you're going to have to find a way, but there are some signs here that the Bills can point to. There's some advantages they can point to with this team, not the most disciplined on offense, and CJ Stroud getting sacked a bit. He's not the biggest scrambler that the Bills have faced. Like Lamar, Trevor, Kyle, like these are all scramblers. Like Stroud he's going to want to stay in the pocket
Yeah.
if he can. So there could be some opportunities, but again, what will the lack of Von Miller and Ed Oliver mean for this Bills and their ability to kind of generate and move the line of scrimmage on defense?
Yeah, I think you're going to need a big step up game from Gregory Rousseau, right? Like if you want that next contract, if you want to be that alpha dude on this defensive line, guys like Von Miller being out, guys like Ed Oliver being out, like this is the game where you take advantage if you're Gregory Rousseau and you step up. One of the funnier things that I enjoyed last week watching the Jaguars Texans game was Laramie Tunsil got called for like a million holds in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And did you see why he was getting called for all those holds?
No, what happened?
The opponent was wearing a white jersey and he was wearing black gloves. So it was making it very, very he was making it very easy for the referees to see him holding. So let's hope that Laramie Tunsil does not smarten up and wear white gloves today. Let's hope that no one takes a page out of Michael Jackson's playbook and no one is wearing white gloves on that Houston Texans offensive line today, because that was legitimately pretty funny. Like the broadcaster was like, this dumbass is wearing black gloves.
I had the game on the multi-view, but I didn't have the audio on for that one. But that's so good. That's really good.
I was laughing. I had never heard that before. I was laughing my ass off. I'm like, so let's hope the Houston Texans offensive line doesn't smarten up and decide to wear white gloves in this one. But the Bills defense, they got their teeth kicked in versus Baltimore last week. Despite the injuries, I do expect them to respond. But there's a real mystery bag element to the Buffalo Bills defense this week. You have Cole Bishop making his first start. You have Terrell Bernard coming back from injury. How healthy is he? You have maybe an increased presence of Javon Solomon on third down in pass rush situations. And then obviously you have Dwayne Carter and Zion Logue inside. Carter getting more run and Logue getting his first run of the season, having been here for 4 days. Some real, just like we don't really know what to expect from this Buffalo Bills defense in regard to those five guys.
Well, and I will say this too, the Bills defense got their teeth kicked in, like you mentioned, against the Ravens. Like, I think we saw last week, hopefully the worst of what we'll see of this Bills defense this year. So a wake-up call, whatever you want to call it, like the Bills defense had been playing really pretty well the first 3 games, and then obviously got shell-shocked a bit from that first Derrick Henry touchdown run a week ago. And I think that really just set a negative tone for them the entire game. So this is about a reset. If they start the game with a little momentum, even if the Texans get some yards and maybe get a field, whatever, right? Like if they can just show a little bit of resolve, right? Compared to last week's early struggles, because in the beginning of the second half of that game against the Ravens, they came out with a little bit of fire, and then that trick play kind of deflated everything. But there was some signs, there was a pulse for that defense, I thought, at times in the second half of that game last week. So let's hope that can carry over a bit into today's game. Terrell Bernard, you wonder how effective he's going to be. They're not going to put him out there if he's not. Rappaport and others are saying he's going to play. So we'll see, man. I mean, certainly a welcome addition back, but I wonder about the effectiveness.
Lord Corvax comes in and says, by the way, the Goat Head t-shirt is epic. Thank you. I appreciate that. And one of the things that's making me feel pretty confident about the Buffalo Bills today, and our guy, Mike Bunt over at Trainwreck Sports, formerly here at Cover One, he made a really good point earlier this week. Because obviously if you're a Bills fan and you're also a Sabres fan, you know that the Sabres kicked off this week playing some games in Europe. And Mike, I think, rightly pointed out, he's like, listen, if the Sabres come out, strong start, 2-0, the Buffalo Bills are going to lose on Sunday, because both of these teams are not allowed to be good at the same time. So thankfully for the Buffalo Bills' sake, the Sabres came out and embarrassed themselves and puked all over themselves and are 0-2 to start the season. So that's really a good sign for the Buffalo Bills, because one of the two teams is going to be good. And in this case, hopefully it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if I can withstand both. I can't withstand an 0-3 weekend from my Buffalo sports franchises. So if you're a Bills and a Sabres fan, I think we got that to hold on to. Great job, Saber. Yes, in terms of the karmic balance of it all. Thank you. Yes. Lindy Ruff was brought in to win the Bills the Super Bowl, not the Sabres the Stanley Cup. The Houston Texans, a bevy of weapons for CJ Stroud. We've named them all already. Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. The Bills, I think, they're going to need to get pressure with 4 on this offensive line, get creative, pick your spots and blitz 5 to attack what is a struggling offensive line. And then they're just going to have to be really disciplined and communicate in their zone dropbacks. I do not think that the Buffalo Bills have the dogs to try and attack all these weapons man to man. So expect the Bills more creeper pressures, more trying to apply pressure with 4, maybe send a 5th guy every once in a while on sweet occasion, and then just having to communicate and make sure they're dropping back properly into zone.
Yeah, and AJ Epinesa and Rousseau, that length today, getting their hands up in the passing lane is going to be big if you can't get home. I actually wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more pressure, like the Bills kind of dialed up a bit in that second half against Lamar. That's where they started having a little bit more success. They were really struggling against that Ravens O-line to get home with their front 4 against the Ravens offensive line that had question marks as well coming in. So can the Bills against another offensive line that has question marks get pressure with 4, reestablish that line of scrimmage, what they really struggled to do a week ago? Otherwise, if not, I think you're going to have to see them bring some pressure, because I don't think you can let CJ Stroud just stand back there and pick you apart. You're going to have to get him off his spot. So we will see. Hopefully they can get it done.
Yeah, good thing you finished that sentence with get him off the spot there. So special teams, the Tyler Bass experience. The Bills didn't work out or sign any kickers this week after Tyler Bass missed a kick that week. So we get another week of trying to live and ride the roller coaster that is the Tyler Bass experience. You mentioned it a couple of times on the post game shows. We need to keep seeing that consistency from Sam Martin, and then in a game that's going to be tight today, a nice return from Codrington could go a long way in
I've been impressed with him.
And yeah, even though he had that muff last week, he got right on it, and he's done a really good job. Catching the football, securing the football, and getting some nice gains. So maybe he pops a big one this week, and that really sets the tone for the Buffalo Bills and is a game-changing play for the Buffalo Bills. Speaking of game-changing plays, time to get to our pre-game superlatives here. Let's start our pre-game superlative section as we always do with the Take Me Higher player of the game. The Take Me Higher player of the game is a Buffalo Bills player, star player, outside of Josh Allen, who needs to really step up his game in order for the Buffalo Bills to secure a victory against the Houston Texans today. Dave, who is your Take Me Higher player of the game?
Well, I will say this, because I know you're rolling out the James Cook Rolodex again, I'm sure. So I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. Yeah. I'm going to say no Von Miller, no Ed Oliver. This is your time to shine today, Gregory Rousseau. I think Gregory Rousseau, not just about the cleanup sacks today. It's about the run game. It's about getting the hands up, batting balls down. It's about getting a sack or 2 or more. Gregory Rousseau, maybe it's his time. He kind of has taken over this defensive line as it is. He's probably as far as the edges, he is the best player on the edges the Bills have. And without Ed Oliver, and even with Ed Oliver, you can make the case he's the best defensive lineman the Bills have. He has to have a big game today. CJ Stroud's been sacked 13 times so far this year. The Texans, we mentioned, have all those offensive penalties, most in the NFL so far this year. He has to impact this game today. Gregory Rousseau will be my Take Me Higher player for today's game.
We got Brennan P coming in saying Dalton Kincaid, 10 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. And Charles G saying, feeling a big day for Keon Coleman. Yeah, it would be easy to roll out James Cook again. And I think it's pretty much obviously a given. You need to get this guy the ball. He needs to be pushing 150 all-purpose yards, score a touchdown, I think, for the Buffalo Bills to really have a chance. So he should be the Take Me Higher player of the game. But this one is more from a moral principle standpoint. I'm going to switch it up this week. I'm going with Keon Coleman. Unleash the rookie. Unleash him. Like, push the ball down the field with him. Give him that back shoulder stuff that seemed to start working against the Baltimore Ravens. Give him some of those extension of the run game yak opportunities, and give him opportunities as a big slot. Get the ball into the hands of Keon Coleman. I would like to see him push 10 targets in this game. I know he's a rookie, but with Khalil Shakir out, I would really like to see the Buffalo Bills see what they got in this guy, and I know he leads the team in snaps, but really make him sort of a piece that this offense funnels through at least for a week while Khalil Shakir is nursing his injuries. This is a wide receiver by committee. This is sort of that selfish everybody eats approach. But Dave, every week, who do we funnel the offense through this week? And every week it's been James Cook, it's been Khalil Shakir, it's been Dalton Kincaid. I'd like to see Keon Coleman be that one of those guys this week with Khalil Shakir being out. So make him a focal point of your offense. Make him in someone that you're mindful of getting the ball into his hands on a regular occasion. All right, up next is our wild card player of the game. All right, Dave, who is your surprise player that needs to step up for the Buffalo Bills? Just making a play or two here or there for the Buffalo Bills to get this victory against the Houston Texans.
Big shoes to fill, but Dwayne Carter for me today. I think, look, does he count as a wild card player if he's like a main starter? I think he does today, right? Because it's his first start, and there's question marks around what kind of contribution he might make today. And Brendan has Carter as well. Like, look, without Joe Mixon, you would like to think that this Bills front can contain this Texans running game, force this Texans team who struggled a bit on third down so far this year into some longer down and distances. Dwayne Carter with Daquan Jones are going to have to be able to stop Cam Akers and whoever it is. Like, after what we saw last week, can this front be trusted to stop the run? I don't know. They're dead last in the NFL in fantasy points allowed to running backs, obviously. But like, anyway, besides that, this team needs to stop the run to make the Texans one-dimensional. If guys like Cam Akers, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the other guy's name because you practice it for 10 minutes, and get going, that's really not good. So Dwayne Carter, for me, wild card, step up in the run game especially. I don't know what he's going to offer you pass rush-wise. He might not even be in on pass rushing situations. That's TBD. But on early downs, I think Dwayne Carter needs to be a wild card in the positive. So I'll say Dwayne Carter, wild card player for today.
Not so much relevant to the wild card player of the game. That's a pretty funny comment here from RJ Melville. This offense is more like everyone is intermittent fasting. Charles G comes in and says Deion, Spencer Brown, they'll have their hands full with Anderson and Hunter. Yeah, I mean, I would put that more for take me higher player of the game, right? You're going to want those two guys to really elevate you and elevate your offensive line. Roy Collins says step up player Bass, 5 for 5 on field goals with one over 50 yards. That would be something. And Salib comes in and says Rasul 31 fourth quarter pick 6. That would be a big one as well. My wild card player of the game is Javon Solomon. I'm going to predict a sack and multiple third down pressure from him today in the Von Miller third down pass rush specialist role. Maybe a little too high on the rookie, but you know what? Why not? We both loved him.
2 rookies we got in the wild card.
University of Troy, yeah, rookie defensive lineman, and those are the guys who are going to have to step up in order for the Buffalo Bills to be successful. Up next here is our Respect You player of the game. All right, next up, our Respect You player of the game. This is one or two players from the Houston Texans that the Buffalo Bills have to respect in order to get this victory today.
Man, this team has been sacked by committee. Defensive line, like they have 8 different guys with a sack on this team so far this season. And I mean, you got to say, like, Will Anderson, 2.5 sacks leading the team, stud, ascending player. 9 different players with a sack I have in my notes. Will Anderson, I think, against I think we have to say less than 100% Deion Dawkins, right? And we saw Deion struggle a bit last week. I think Nico Collins, obviously, I think he's kind of like the Josh Allen equivalent, right? Him and Stroud. Like, it goes without saying, you have to respect Nico Collins. So I'm gonna throw it to Will Anderson and say this guy with 2.5 sacks leading the Texans so far this year against a less than 100% Dawkins or Spencer Brown, depending on where they line him up. To me, don't let this guy negatively impact the game for you. Josh Allen's been pretty good about avoiding sacks so far this year. But we saw the Bills' offensive line struggle a little bit last week against the Ravens with some of those pressures, and it made it for a long day for that Bills offense. So I will say Will Anderson is my respect you player for today.
My respect you players of the game are Nico Collins and Tank Dell. The engine of this Houston Texans offense is twofold. We already mentioned the run game at the top of the show, but they're kind of on the struggle bus right now without Joe Mixon. So the offense for the Houston Texans is a little bit clunky, but at the end of the day, Nico Collins is a true X receiver in the National Football League. I mean, this guy just has the ability to get open on the boundary. He has the ability to get open in the middle of the field. He makes plays in the deep and intermediate. Like, he just makes plays at all three levels. Nico Collins is an absolute stud. I know this firsthand because he's on multiple of my fantasy teams and he just cooks every week for me. So thank you, Nico, but maybe lose me a couple of fantasy leagues this week. I wouldn't mind. And then Tank Dell. I mean, we both loved him coming out of college. And his big playability from literally anywhere on the field. He can take it and he can house it from anywhere. At the end of the day, this Houston Texans offense is best when those two guys are getting the ball in their hands and when they're not trying to force feed it to other guys to make them happy, because those are the two studs in that wide receiver room. So those are my respect you players of the game, Nico Collins. And
got a hypothetical question for you and for the comment section. So Joe Mixon's going to be out today. Would you have rather Tank Dell been out and have to deal with Joe Mixon, or would you rather Joe Mixon be out and have to now deal with Tank Dell, Diggs, and Collins?
Joe Mixon out, 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
I agree.
take that element of their game away.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think that's what that Mixon injury at least has done for the last couple of weeks. Again, the Bills are dealing with it up front, especially on the defensive interior. So maybe Cam Akers can have himself a day, but let's hope not. Let's hope guys like Dwayne Carter, Branson Dean, et cetera, can step up and the Buffalo Bills can shut down that running game. All right, on to our next superlative, which is our fire sale, our hottest take of the game. All right, Dave. We're not the hot take artists, on the YouTube. There are other channels for that, but every once in a while we like to throw the hot takes around. What is your hot take for today's game against the Houston Texans?
Yeah, I think no Khalil Shakir. I'm looking at you, Curtis Samuel. I'm looking at you, James Cook. So I'm going to combine a hot take for these two players and say that James Cook over 100 rushing yards, first time of the season for him. And I think Curtis Samuel over, I'll say 75 receiving yards and a touchdown for him. So I know we want to get Keon involved, but I do think it's really important for the Bills and for Joe Brady to find a way to get their quote prize free agent signing involved, and kind of that narrative around him being the guy that's, at least on paper, was the guy they signed to come in after Stefon Diggs was gone. James Cook going to be a workhorse today, 100 yards on the ground. Curtis Samuel 75 and a touchdown.
Roy Collins comes in and saying Judge usually has some lukewarm takes. Let's see if this is spicy enough for you, Roy. I'm gonna say Kincaid and Knox both score touchdowns today. So if you are one of those gambling folk, put it down a nice little parlay on a Kincaid and Knox anytime touchdown. I think both tight ends get involved in this game. I hope both tight ends get involved in this game. And I think both of them score touchdowns a la that Pittsburgh Steelers AFC wild card round last year. So get both the tight ends involved, get both the tight ends in the end zone, and I think good things will happen for the Buffalo Bills. All right, let's finish things off here with our game prediction. Let's see, Charles G's got coming already and just like one up me here. He says Knox gets 2 tutties today. All right, Dave, paint a picture for us. How does this game look for the Buffalo Bills today?
I think the defense comes out and responds after last week, having the emotional leader and the captain, Terrell Bernard, back today, even if he's not quite 100%. Well, I think lift the spirits of this defense up. Another tough game on the road, second road game in a row for this team. But I think they respond better today. And I think the offense is able to kind of stay into their game plan today. And it's a tight one throughout. I'm thinking the Texans will have their moments in this game as well, but I think Josh Allen and this offense respond. James Cook has a big game, as I predicted in the hot take section, and that the defense does enough to slow down that running game huge without having Joe Mixon in the fold for the Texans. And ultimately, the Bills win a close one at the end. I'll say Bills 30, Texans 27.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have a little bit lower of a score this week in my, my game prediction. I'm going to go Bills 23, Texans 20. I really got nothing in terms of sort of painting a picture for this game. Like it is what it is at this point. I think there's just so many mystery bags for the Buffalo Bills on defense this week with so many new players. It'll be really interesting to see how they respond after what happened against the Baltimore Ravens. It'll be interesting to see how Houston responds to all their injuries and again, how their lack of running backs affects them offensively, whether they get their stuff cleaned up in terms of the penalties along the offensive line. There's so many question marks as these teams try to start hitting their stride as we get into the middle of the season here. I'm not really particularly confident in the Buffalo Bills' chances of winning this game. Like, I think it's a true 50-50 game, but I'm also like not blowing into a bag panicking at this point, which is unusual for me. So I don't know, maybe it's I'm too tired to be panicked. But yeah, I got Bills 23, Texans 20 for my final prediction. Got a couple people coming in here. Roy Collins not feeling it, says Houston 31-20. My dad coming in saying Texans 35, Bills 28. Thanks, Dad. Now the Bills are going to win because that's a reverse jinx. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Lord Corvax comes in, says Bills 34, Diggs and Friends 27. So I'm not mentally prepared for the Stefon Diggs discourse if he has a big game and the Texans win. Like
it's coming.
I don't know if I'm emotionally mature enough to be on the internet if that happens. So I might have to just delete my my Twitter app if something like that happens. Just take a week off. Just take a week off.
You talked about the anytime touchdowns for Knox and maybe throw a little anytime TD on Diggs.
I think like if I'm like, I don't know how much money you would make from this, but if you wanted to put 3 players together on an anytime touchdown, James Cook, Stefon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, like I feel pretty good about
I was thinking James Cook, Nico Collins, Stefon Diggs. I like that one too.
How about you throw Josh Allen in there? So Josh Allen rushing, James Cook either rushing or catching, Nico and Diggs.
Yeah,
that would be a pretty good 4-man parlay right there. Put $5 on it, win 25 or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a big betting guy, but I haven't even downloaded my FanDuel this year. Like usually I download it, put like $200 on and have some fun. I haven't even done that this year. So, life is better when you gamble.
Discipline. You're disciplined.
Yeah, that's what it is. Not too busy, just discipline.
Yeah, you're disciplined.
Don't forget the Cover One post game show is live tonight following the game. We will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time with our biggest takeaways from the game as well. So got you fully covered here at Cover One. There was a comment in the comment section I want to get to before we leave. Ralph Wilson Sr. coming in with a great comment. He says, rest in peace, Billy Shaw, the only Hall of Famer who never played in the NFL, played his whole career in Buffalo, winning 2 championships. Lord Corvax comes in and says, rest in peace, Billy. So yes, thoughts are with the family of Billy Shaw and that whole community of Buffalo Bills alumni this week. Obviously, neither of us ever saw Billy Shaw play football, but I remember had season tickets at the Ralph for 10, 15 years. Went with my dad and just hearing some of the stories, pointing at some of the names on the Ring of Honor and hearing some of those stories from before my time was always a lot of fun. So much respect to Billy Shaw, thoughts of this family, and a big loss for the Buffalo Bills community this week.
Yeah, same. Echo those thoughts as well. And, maybe that'll put some good vibes in the air today for this Bills team.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We always appreciate you there in the comment section. There is still quite an amount of time. I'm not good at the whole math, but what is it? 4 hours until kickoff. So if you could, hit that like button, helps us with the algorithm. Click that share button, copy the link, send it to family, friends, anyone you think would rather listen to us ramble for an hour than people like I don't even know who's on the morning shows anymore, rambling about Stefon Diggs and the drama surrounding the Buffalo Bills. So if you want to hear talk about the game and not the drama, click that share button and send it to some people who you think might enjoy us here at the Cover One Air Raid Hour pregame show. Thank you guys so much, and until next time, we'll see you tomorrow night. Go Bills!
Go Bills!
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!